Okay, guys, welcome back to the channel. Another day, another rant. Let's get into it. I'm going to start with reading a little bit of we'll call this the prelude to the rant. So, we're going to talk about Canada's fertility rate and we're going to read an article. Part of this article is from a major media outlet. It could be CTV or whatever. I can't remember. It's one of the major outlets, but I have it here in some notes. So, I'm going to read it out to you guys and you guys can let me know what you think in the comments, but I'm going to give you my perspective also. So, Canada's fertility rate has dropped to the second lowest in the G7, now nearing Japan. Okay. According to new data from Statistics Canada, in 2023, Canada's fertility rate, the average number of children a woman's births in her lifetime, fell to 1.26 from 1.33, which is below replacement level. Okay, which means that Canada's current birth rate can no longer replace itself. Okay, guys, that's a big deal. Canada's current birth rate can no longer replace itself. Very concerning. The replacement rate is supposed to be 2.1. So if we want to replace Canada's population, Canadians are going to need to birth at a 2.1 rate. Right now, we're at a 1. Let's just look at the exact number to be specific. Now we're at a 1.26. Okay, guys, we're at a 1.26. We need to be at a 2.1. That's an issue, guys. That's an issue. Okay, but let's read a little bit more about this because it gets a little crazier. Okay. Sorry about this, guys. I'm just trying to get through these notes. Oh yeah. Okay, this is an interesting fact here. The US's birth rate of 2023 was 1.62. So to be honest, their birth rate wasn't much better, right? So I'm not necessarily gonna play the contrast game here and say, oh, well, one's so much better than the other, because honestly, they're both really bad. But one of the reasons that the news article specified that this is happening, and this is the news article, not me, guys, so don't come at me. They're saying that it's because women are choosing to prioritize careers and they're having children later in life. And they're just in general pursuing, they're doing career pursuits as opposed to family, right? Now, I want to give my opinion as to why I think Canada's birth rate declining. I don't agree with that point that the article made. It was like CTV or some major news article. I don't agree with that point. I don't disagree with that point. I think it's a valid point. And yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons, but I think there's many other reasons, right? And let's think about dating in Canada right now, okay? It's fair to say, if we're going to be honest, women are hypergamous or hypergamous, however you pronounce it. But essentially, they want men who can provide the best value, or in other words, men who are in a stable enough position, or I'm not even going to just say stable. I'm going to say, the cliche that's tossed around, again, not my words, it's a cliche that's tossed around, is 6 feet 6 inches 6 figures. Now, whether or not you agree with that, that's besides the point. Okay, and I'm not sitting here saying that that should be the de facto standard. I'm simply saying that most women have a idea of masculinity that they desire that may not be readily available in the dating pool at all times. Okay, and when you think about Canada, right? If we're going to talk about the description I just said, which was 6 feet 6 inches 6 figures, that sort of thing. If we're going to speak about that, we have to acknowledge the fact that many people in Canada are not earning 6 figures. When I looked at the data last time, I think it was around 12%, maybe 15%. But I want to say it's no more than 12% of people who earn 6 figures. So it's not a very high percentage of people who earn 6 figures. But then you also have to equate into the fact that is 6 figures back in the day adjusted for 6 figures now? Can we say that 6 figures goes as far now as it used to? I'm going to say it doesn't. And I'm going to say that with the way inflation is now, 6 figures doesn't go very far. So if we acknowledge the fact that 6 figures doesn't go very far, then we also have to acknowledge the fact that maybe that number is outdated. And if it's outdated, that means there's an even smaller percentage of men who fit into the dating pool that would be considered desirable for most women, right? And then there's another factor to consider is what would be the incentive to date in this market if you're a dude, if you're seeing the societal decline, you're seeing cost of living skyrocket, housing skyrocket, you are probably honestly in many cases trying to get out of Canada. So you're probably not even trying to set up shop here realistically, right? And so where is the incentive for a man to give birth, right? Not sorry, not a man to give birth, a man to impregnate a woman and raise a family, right? In Canada, anyways, right? And let's also talk about the fact that a large percentage of Canadians live in British Columbia, Toronto, and Montreal. Let's just call a spade a spade. If you look around the world, the countries that are more religious tend to have more children. So, faith, family, core values, purpose, meaning, that is generally speaking a religious pursuit. Countries that are secular are more nihilistic and less purpose oriented. So, their core value system isn't one that would even really desire having kids because it's not a life of purpose and meaning. Many people would prefer DINK, right? Double income, no kids. And so when we talk about this birth rate declining and the fact that it's hitting its new record lows, because again, this is a record low. This isn't like, if you were to look at the chart, it's a declining chart going downwards, right? It's not as if it's a chart with like volatility like this. It's a chart that's going downwards, right? So we're at a record low. And realistically, I don't see the Canadian citizens having any incentive to have children, right? I mean, I'm not saying this is for every single Canadian in the country. I'm saying that if the dating pool has shrunk in terms of available candidates for women, meaning men that women would be desiring to date, many of those same men who would be considered viable candidates, many of them don't have to live in Canada, meaning that they have the means to leave. And so they have to make a conscious effort to stay here, right? Because if you have the option to leave, it means you're choosing to stay. And so if these men in these theoretical men that I'm describing, the 6 feet 6 inches 6 figures men, if a company in another country calls them and says, hey, you can move here, the cost of living is lower, your earnings are going to be higher, and you're going to be taxed less, do you want to come? Do you think they're going to stay, guys? Like, that's the thing here. Like, I mean, this is what I mean. Like, I think when we talk about the birth rate and the declining birth rate, part of what makes this a little funny to me is we're downplaying how many factors are contributing to this, and we're pretending that it's only a few factors here and there. It's many factors that are impacting why people don't want to have children. And because it's many factors that are impacting why people want to have children, I don't see this birth rate getting any better, right? And I don't see just mass importing people as a solution, because many of those people are not going to necessarily, well, not let's just call a spade, right? You can't go to any land and replace the people and say that that land is going to be preserved, that culture is going to be preserved, the quality of life is going to be preserved. Nothing's going to be preserved. If we were to go to Japan right now and just replace it with another race of people, it wouldn't be Japan. If we were to go to Denmark and just replace it with another race of people, it wouldn't be Denmark. If we were to go to Africa and just kick out everyone who's African, it wouldn't be an African nation. And so Canada's declining birth rate, it would need to be solved by resolving the core factors, right? The core factors that are causing these issues. And there, like I said, there's so many that I really don't see how it would improve, and I don't think it's going to improve. And I think those who want to have children will go to cultures where faith is more important in those cultures, where people naturally have a predisposition or an innate desire to have children. Because why live somewhere where less and less people are in the dating pool desiring to have children? Less and less people can even have kids because they literally can't afford to take care of themselves. So how are they going to afford to take care of children? It just doesn't make any sense. Like, I mean, if you can't pay your own bills, how are you going to pay the bills of a child? Like, it's just not, it just doesn't make any mathematical sense. And so again, like that's just one of the many reasons why, people are just simply not going to have the kids. So are not going to be having kids. And yeah, guys, I mean, I think it's a bit of a joke to pretend like there's going to be a quick fix, or if this is just a temporary bump in the road. It's not a temporary bump in the road. This rodeo is going to get a lot more rocky, and yeah, there's no signs of improving. And honestly, I wouldn't even want to have kids in Canada from a perspective that, considering that, when you look at the way the government is in Canada and how much they tax the nation, but how little they desire to incentivize businesses to come here and start up shop, and how much regulations they have. I mean, they've made it to where the desire to create a business has been dampened because of how much the monopolies and oligopolies control the nation. There's like Canada is run by monopolies and oligopolies, and so it's like when you start thinking about that, it's like, is this a good place to have children? Like if you're having kids and you're like, hey, I want to give my kids the best future, the best possible outcome, is Canada the best place to do that? Again, I disagree. I really don't think so. So, you know, yeah, guys, I know this rant seems a little aimless and it seems a little bit all over the place, but I just, my perspective is there's really no, I really don't see it being viable for most people to have children if most people find it too expensive to live here. Because if you think it's expensive to live here when you're single, how expensive do you think it's going to be if you're dating and you're courting a woman and you're bringing her on multiple dates, and then after you bring her on multiple dates, you're then going to at some point raise a child, and then you're going to take care of that kid. I mean, don't get me wrong, if anyone here has a kid or is planning on having a kid, I'm not sitting here saying you shouldn't do it per se. I'm just saying that when I see this declining birth rate, I totally get why it's happening. And I honestly, in some ways, I respect the fact that people aren't having kids. And when I say respect it, I don't mean I'm happy about them not having kids, but I can appreciate that some people are saying, hey, you know what, I can't afford it. I'm not going to bring a kid into this world. And, you know, basically subject them to poverty, right? So people are essentially saying, hey, you know what, like if I'm going to have a challenging time raising this kid and I'm not really going to be able to give this kid a life that I would want to give them, then I'm not going to have them. That doesn't mean I'm happy about the fact that people aren't having kids. I'm just acknowledging the fact that people are operating from a perspective of wisdom and they're being thoughtful about how they're going to impact someone else's life. And I could appreciate that. And I'm in the same camp, right? Like I would never have a child if I couldn't afford a kid. I don't want to put anyone through suffering, and I sure as hell don't want to put my own damn kid through suffering if I were this theoretical kid, right? And so, yeah, guys, I mean, it's just like when you look at the metrics in Canada, like I know I talk about Canada a lot. I mean, I'm Canadian, so that's why. But it's like realistically, it's just like at what point, like, guys, it's just the decline is just so bad in Canada, man. I just how on earth is Canada's birth rate gotten so low that it's basically where Japan's birth rate is, and it's basically considered one of the lower rankings. Well, yeah, it's basically second lowest in the G7, or we could say pretty much the lowest because it's essentially getting to Japan's number at this point. And so, yeah, this is embarrassing. Honestly, I don't really have too much more else to say. I'm actually flabbergasted because I'm thinking about it as I'm ranting, and I'm just like, when is Canada going to put up some numbers that are positive and are quantifiably good? Like when can Canada say, hey, we're a good nation because we do X. We're a good nation because we do Y. Because right now, I'm not seeing the numbers. I'm just hearing I'm seeing the suffering and I'm seeing the negative numbers in Canada. And I'm seeing a small percentage of people who maybe aren't affected by the decline, but them as individuals not being affected is different than statistics, and it's different than economic data, and it's different than quality of life metrics. The fact of the matter is Canada is failing in quality of life metrics. I'm happy for anybody who's thriving here and loves Canada and thinks that Canada is going in a good direction. If you think that, then I'm happy for you. But the numbers don't show that. The economic numbers don't show that. The quality of life metrics don't show that. But yeah, it's crazy, guys. And yeah, that's pretty much the end of this rant. I know this rant was a little bit even less organized than my other rants, but I wanted to get it out because I think I know when it comes to quality of life metrics, a declining birth rate is a telltale sign. If a nation's birth rate is declining at a rapid rate, then I would not encourage someone to come to that nation. I would discourage you. And I wouldn't just discourage you to come to that nation. I would even encourage you to leave, because why stick around when the nation is being stewarded so poorly that the native citizens aren't even motivated to have children? Guys, think about that. The native citizens aren't motivated to have children. That's a concern. That's a sign of a failed government. That's a sign of a failed nation. I wouldn't advise you to come to a failed nation. That being said, anyways, guys, this rat's going to get too long. Like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in. Let me know in the comments what you think. Peace.